Namaste. Today's subject is how to deal with rejection and being unappreciated. And this is a subject that I have quite a bit of experience in. When I started thinking about this, all kinds of memories came to me. And I started thinking, well, let's see, when I was, my earliest memories, was I appreciated? No. And when I was in grade school, was I appreciated by my parents? No. And the kids at school? No. And the teachers? No. And when I got into high school, and did girls appreciate me? No. And when I went and tried to get a job and they didn't hire me, they didn't appreciate me, they rejected me. And the list just kind of went on and on and on and on. And eventually I read Autobiography of a Yogi, and I wasn't happy. I was unappreciated, and I wanted to be happy. So I got to Ananda, and they didn't appreciate me right away either. But they put up with me. So that was the beginning of a change. They allowed that which they didn't fully appreciate to be in their space. After I was at Ananda for a while, I realized that I didn't like people criticizing me. I didn't like, I knew that from before, but I became more aware of how I responded to situations in which I was not being received in the way that I felt that I should be. And I observed that I would berate myself for doing the things that would cause people not to appreciate me. So eventually I realized that I didn't appreciate me either. So here I was living in a world that didn't appreciate me, and I didn't appreciate me. And so that was a problem for being happy. Because why does it bother us that people don't appreciate us? Because we feel that we can't be happy unless others appreciate us. And this is really the state of mind of most people who live in the world. If the world doesn't appreciate you, then you're sure not going to appreciate it. You're going to get back at it. And this whole cycle of being unappreciated and then not appreciating others. Well, I don't appreciate you not appreciating me. And everybody's living in this consciousness of rejection. And then when people do express some appreciation for us, we can't receive it. I remember somebody said to Swamiji, well, I really liked your song. And he said, and then he said, well, thank you. And then the fellow said, but then I don't know anything about music. So it was like, and this is the reliability level of people's appreciation. Look at the famous people. They're appreciated, right? They're so appreciated that hey, stop appreciating me. Leave me alone. I want to eat my dinner in the restaurant. They're so appreciated that they have to... Elvis Presley was so popular that he had to go skiing in the middle of the night because people would mob him. He couldn't go in public because it caused riots. And for a few minutes, it's kind of fun. And you get some big checks, you know, okay, I'm doing well. But then it becomes a prison. All of that, hey, I appreciate. And then if you do something that they don't appreciate, it doesn't matter how much they appreciated you, they're done appreciating you. And in fact, now they don't appreciate you. And it turns into a big mess. So there's a key understanding that we have to understand about the way that life works if we want to be happy. And if we want to be happy, the yogic teachings give us a very clear guideline. Don't rely on things outside of yourself for your happiness. We all know, you've heard me remind you many times, where can happiness be found? Inside. We all know this. But we seek it outside. And but wait a minute. Spiritual life's all about love. So I should love them, they should love me. It should be one big love fest. But how do people love? Are people capable of loving? People, when they talk about love, what they're really saying is, like the guy who commented on Swamiji's song, yeah, I love you, but then I don't know anything about love. Because what do we know about love? The love that people talk about is not universal love. It's emotional love. It's preference. I like you. And we can prove it. Because they say, I love you until you don't appreciate them or they don't appreciate you. And then they say, I hate you. And if you have truly loved someone, you can never hate them. Hate is not a love. It's not in the same word as love. Emotional like and dislike and hate, yes, they go together. So I like you until I don't like you, in which case I will hate you. And this is not love. This is not happiness. So how many times have we read about this in the newspaper? The famous couple that go to Las Vegas, and they go on a big party spree, and next thing you know, they're married. Now they're married. I love you forever, and a day, a week, or a month, or a year later, they're divorced. And this is not an easy thing. Many of the couples at Noida have gotten divorced. Relationships aren't easy. All of life is not easy. I remember in my educational career, many teachers. And like many other people, there was a couple of standout teachers. Teachers who were above all the rest in my opinion, as to them being really good teachers. And what's interesting is, as I look back at it, I realize that the teachers that I liked the best were the toughest, not the easiest. But I had other tough teachers that I didn't appreciate, I didn't like. And I could see the difference. The difference is that the really good teachers, they were honest and they were fair. And they were tough. They demanded excellence, but they were fair. And they expressed because I knew they were honest, when they expressed appreciation, I could receive it more. I said, wow, if I get a you did a good job from her, then wow, I really did do a good job. Because I know she's not going to give it to me for free. Where you get sometimes I'll stereotype mothers who will go, oh, you're okay, you're a good boy. Yes, you punched the other fellow in the nose, but it's okay, you're a good boy. No, you're not a good boy in that situation. Don't punch people in the nose. Well, wait a minute, maybe there's good reason, who can say? But that is not honest communication. So then you end up communicating with people in life, most of the time people are not being honest. Or you can't tell whether they're being honest or not. In fact, they don't even know if they're being honest. They might think, hey, this is really how I feel, but on a deeper level, is that really how they feel? Because if they were really being honest, they wouldn't have gone to Las Vegas and gotten married and gotten divorced the next week. They weren't capable. And this is why when young people get very attracted, and they say, well, they're 16, 17 years old and they want to get married, and you're too young. And it's not always true, but we could generalize and say that you're too young to really understand how you feel yet. You need more experience to put these feelings in a larger perspective. Well, one of the advantages of arranged marriages here in India is you have people who aren't emotionally attached in the same way. But the other side of it is that relationships can't just be a business relationship. So, and this is where insight, intuitive understanding comes in. The ability to perceive truth. So if we want to deal with rejection and not being appreciated, we have to get to truth. So how can we get to truth? Well, first we should probably consult with Swami Kriyananda. So let's do that.
When the Emperor Alexander invaded from Greece, he invaded the Orient and invaded India. And in India he discovered yogis. And so he sent word to one yogi who just lived under a tree. And he said that if you come, I'll heap you with wealth. If you don't come, I'll take your head off. And this yogi said, the wealth that your emperor promises me is to me absolutely meaningless. And if he wants to take my head, I don't need my hand. He's perfectly welcome to take it. It will do him no good, but I don't need it, so let him come if he wants to. If he wants to ask questions, he has to come to me. And so Alexander went to him and asked him questions. But when we can reach that level of self-sufficiency, even if they take our bodies, what does it matter? We're not this body. If they want to take our wealth away, fine. If you can have that sense of self-sufficiency, the one thing that's, in a practical way, worth having in this is that then you suddenly find that the laws of the universe work for you, so that you have what you need wherever you go. People who are like beggars, always wishing more, always thinking that if I had this, then I'd be happy, they're never happy. But also, it's sort of like a dog. If you chase after him, he runs away. But if you call to him, he comes. So if you chase after wealth, it runs away. But if you just are self-sufficient and call to things, you'll draw whatever you need to yourself. Knowledge, wealth, opportunity. It's amazing how much this world responds to our consciousness. So that wherever you go, you meet friends if you're a friend, enemies if you're an enemy. A friend, I roomed with a young man in college who had agitation consciousness. Wherever he went, things always happened to him. He'd go in a crowd and somebody would pull a gun on him. Why'd you touch my girl? I didn't even know. But one time he came back from, he'd just been out for a short walk. He came back, collapsed on the bed, and apparently 6 black men had attacked him with daggers, and he had run and managed to escape them. And I was really curious, because whenever I went out, everything was peaceful and calm, and I thought, well, I've just got to see this. So it was pretty stupid on my part, but I went right where all those black men had pulled daggers on him, and all I saw was somebody smoking in a doorway, absolute peace. And when we went out together, everything was peaceful. But when he went alone, you just never knew what was going to happen next. But it's our consciousness that draws to us whatever comes to us. And when you have a strong expectation of good, then good comes to you. When you have an expectation of kindness, kindness comes to you. I know with him, he had only to look at somebody in a restaurant or something. Why do you look at me like that? But they didn't think that way about me. Even strangers. I know one time I was in Paris and I wanted to go to a concert, but it was in a church and they were just closing the door. It was my birthday, and so it was to me important, but just as they were closing the door, the hall was full. And I said, but it's my birthday. And they said, oh, well, happy birthday. And they asked me. And but they couldn't put me in the crowd because it was completely full. So they put me up behind the altar in the church. And there were 2 or 3 people up there with me. And the music was very blissful and wonderful. But later, I was in the metro, in the subway in Paris. And some old lady came up to me and she said, do you remember me? I said, well, no. But I was in the audience. But there's 700 people in the audience. How would I recognize her? But she sat down and was telling me troubles she was having with her daughter and all these things. But somehow she had felt that I was her friend. So when you become filled with joy in yourself, then people feel that. Whatever you are, you draw to yourself.
It seems that your own consciousness and energy vibration then is extremely important to how your experience.
Important. If you want to succeed, have success consciousness. And it's important also to mix with people who have that consciousness, because they will help to develop your magnetism. Magnetism is something that is shared. And this is why on the spiritual path it's important to mix with saintly people. Don't mix with worldly people.
Swami, is material self-sufficiency a prerequisite for spiritual self-sufficiency?
No. Well, let me put it this way. You can't become spiritually self-sufficient if you feel that you need material things. So material self-sufficiency means that you don't depend on matter for your happiness. Obviously you need food, but you're not a beggar. I don't know how to put it. You have the right magnetism to draw to yourself what you need.
Mm-hmm.
When you don't have the desire for...
That's right. Yeah.
And spiritually, can one develop self-sufficiency spiritually?
Self-sufficiency ultimately is spiritual. That you don't need other people. I know there's one woman I know who says other people's opinion of me is their opinion of me is not my problem.
Mm-hmm.
You have any opinion of me that you like, it doesn't matter to me.
Mm-hmm.
To have that kind of self-sufficiency, not to need to watch television or do these things. The more you have of that, the more complete you are in yourself. The spiritual path, finally, it's not a matter of becoming poor. It's a matter of becoming rich in God. You find that your life is filled with God and you don't need distractions.
So we went from how to deal with rejection and being unappreciated to self-sufficiency. And this is a key thing to understand. We think that the way to solve problems is to solve them on the outside. And to some degree that's true. I mean, if you're not getting along with others, then you may have to sit down and have a chat with them and come to some compromise. If you're at work and you're not communicating well with the other people on the team, then you may have to give extra attention on the outside to these things. But if you deal with life like that, what you're trying to do is put a Band-Aid on every problem. You can't solve, you can't heal your circumstance in life, which is basically that you're not happy. And you want to be happy in all circumstances. You see, we've been brought up to think that in order to be happy, all circumstances should be the way that we want them to be. If I want to be happy, I shouldn't be fired. If I want to be happy, I should be healthy. If I want to be happy, I should have a perfect soulmate relationship. This is wrong thinking. This approach to life, it's quite clear because most people live that way that it doesn't work. So then if you consult those who have achieved a level of well-being to be emulated, they said, hey, look, he's got something I want. What is he doing? And if you look at the saints, they're the only ones who have happiness, peacefulness, calmness, equilibrium in all circumstances. And as Swamiji described, this yogi who could say, in all sincerity, one, I don't need your wealth. And of course, the worldly man says, what, are you out of your mind? Take the wealth. And this is the most powerful person on the planet right now, whose army is about to invade your country and has sent someone and says, we'll kill you in a moment. And the yogi says, so, take my head. I don't need it. Because which I is he talking about? He's not talking about the ego that wants to be appreciated. Oh, why don't you like me? I'm a nice guy. Why did you come over to our country and cause problems? Let's sit down and be friendly. He didn't bother with that stuff. Well, it ends up that he became Alexander's guru. But that's another story. Within that story is the fact that the universe resolved in the favor of the yogi. And the yogi was in the right place at the right time to do the right thing. So when you're being unappreciated in any circumstance in life, think about this. Who isn't appreciating you? Who is the one who's not? Who is the one who's acting unappreciation? God is, through those forms. They don't realize it. In the smaller scheme of things, they're just emotionally whatever they are. But in the reality of your journey through the creation, God in that limited form is expressing an energy that you need to learn to deal with Dharma consciousness, with freedom. When you become freed from the world controlling your happiness, you are free. That's a huge thing. If we are going to rely on the opinions of others and on the series of circumstances that take place in life around us, for our happiness and well-being, we are in serious trouble. And of course, that's why we're all here, because we want to get out of serious trouble. We want to get out of being unhappy when people don't appreciate us. So we need to learn how. Remember, there was a story in the autobiography of a yogi when Master fled to the Himalayas and without Sruteshwar's approval. And when he came back, Master said to Sruteshwar, I'm sorry, and it must have caused you problems, me not being here to take care of certain things that are responsibilities. He says, there's no problem. I don't expect anything of you. You don't have to do anything for me. When Master first met Sruteshwar, and Sruteshwar says, I give you my unconditional love. That doesn't get more accepting than that. But what was Master's response? Of course, remember, this is the Leela. He's playing a role here for our lesson right here. So, well, sir, what if I should find that you're ever less than completely God realized? And Sruteshwar, I don't need your love. Your love stinks. Oh, yes, sir, I give you my love. Because as soon as you step into the ego's view, which is, I'll give you this if you give me that, that's not love. Love isn't something that requires anything to come back. And when we realize that the only way to truly love is to first of all be able to connect to God, infinite, universal love, and then to have that love flowing through us, not the emotional like and dislike. Only that love is true love. It requires nothing in return, and the way that it's returned to us is that it's flowing through us. That's why it's said goodness is its own reward. When you live in good or God consciousness, that's what you experience. That you don't need anything coming back the other way. So when we experience God presence inside, in the beginning, we don't experience anything. And gradually through the practice of Kriya, we begin to perceive energy going up and down the spine. But once, that's not enough. Eventually the energy flows up the spine and it goes up, up. It doesn't go up, down, it goes up, up. It's a fountain, a flow of God presence. This is, and when you live in this flow of God presence, this is the solution to handle not only rejection and being unappreciated, but virtually everything else. And Swamiji said, when you live in God consciousness, then everything in life is provided. You recognize that the universe will support you. Yeah, remember the story of Senor Cuaron in Mexico City, who was a center leader there, and he wanted to get a job, and he wrote to Master, and Master said, "Don't take the job." And there was shenanigans going on in that company, and the person who ended up taking the job ended up in jail. But there was a story underneath that, which was that Senor Cuaron was already well off. He didn't need the job. Psychologically, he thought he needed it, but he didn't need it. And the universe was, and there was a tipping point. What if he had taken the job and not consulted with Master? Who can say? Well, we don't know how the universe still might have saved him in some way. But we think that when life gets uncomfortable, it's bad and things are going wrong. But they might be going the perfect right. Remember the story of the young girl who was able to heal others. But when his father got sick, she refused to heal him. And everybody complained, what a terrible daughter that won't even heal her own father. She said, no, it's not a good idea, but they pressured her eventually. She did. She prayed that he be healed. He was healed. And after he became healed, he went off and got himself into trouble. Where if he had not gotten healed, he would have stayed at home and not gotten into trouble. So we think that the circumstances of our life challenges are unfair. But the reality is that there's nothing that we can experience that isn't ours. At minimum, we're not strong enough to repel it. Even we could be connected to some larger group karma, and our individual karma isn't strong enough to protect us. But in the end, what do we need to be protected from? Take the worst case scenario in any situation in which you feel rejected and unappreciated and say, "What? Take my head." And what did the yogi say? He says, the Master said, somebody must have complained about being too tired to meditate at night. I'm going to die if I don't get to sleep. Die if you must. What is it that we're seeking? Universal happiness. We're seeking the only ultimate greatest reality for which any thousands of human pleasures can't touch. And yet we think it should be easy. And we think that we deserve it. And the truth is we do. we do deserve it because it's who and what we really are. But we don't deserve it because we're so good. We deserve it because it's the truth of all life. But we don't deserve it by thinking that we deserve it. We deserve it by giving ourselves into the reality of the way that life is made. This chant that we chanted earlier, in this world, Mother, no one can love me. In this world, they do not know how to love me. It's true. Human love is unreliable, and it's not, in most cases, it's really not true love. But then it goes on and says, where is there true loving love? And then, what is that next line? My soul, but it's where is there pure loving love, truly loving
Me.
What is it? Me? No, it's thee. You see, we think that the most beautiful place is going to be when everyone loves me, when God loves me. It's thee, truly. And this is what I found when I came to Ananda. It's a revolutionary thought to realize that the solution is not for everybody to love me, it's for me to love thee. It's for the energy that flows through my consciousness to love. I sang it that way for many years. So don't. I sang many of the chants wrong for many years because I didn't see clearly what the point of it was. I made the point that which I could understand in that moment. But when I heard thee, I realized, oh, it's when I love thee, my Lord, that everything resolves in a positive circumstances. I'm happiness, and then the things that happen outside of myself don't make a bit of difference. Live, die, wealthy, poor, good food, bad food. It doesn't make a bit of difference to your happiness. But in that happiness, in that consciousness of finally accessing your universal reality, your true higher self, then everything else comes with it. And the universe supports your need. And this is a completely different approach than I'm going to fix it on the outside. And everything needs its own Band-Aid. This is the universal Kriya Yoga approach to solving every problem, including feeling rejected and unappreciated. Live in love of God. Don't just love God from a distance. Feel that God's love is flowing through you. Master said, meditate. If you want to feel joy, meditate with joy. So yeah, maybe it'll be imagination for a day, a week, a month, or 10 years. But if you practice Kriya, you practice Hong Sa, the point will come where, okay, I've primed the pump, now the water's flowing. Now it starts to flow. And once it starts to flow, you'll know that the only source of lasting happiness, of truly fulfilling happiness, comes from inside, not from any other person, even from a saint. Outward praise isn't the answer. It's inner consciousness. There's a disciple of Sri Ramakrishna. When he was dying, he had throat cancer, and his body was racked with pain. And one of the disciples came to him and said, "Sir, how are you feeling?" And Ramakrishna began to describe all of the ravages of the disease that were taking place in his body. And as he described this, the disciple began to feel bliss and bliss and bliss. And then finally he said, "Yes, sir, I understand how you're feeling." This is the key. is to perceive it on the inside. And this is the only reality. And all of the reasons that we feel hurt, I've bruised my ego, my ego. My ego has been bruised by this whatever experience that has made us feel rejected and unappreciated. This is all done so that we can learn to be freed from that. The very lessons that the good teacher gives us, the tough teacher. Because the tough teacher makes you a better student. They're tough, but you know when you're done with that class, you're going to have achieved the highest level that you can achieve through that experience. So this is why once you've tasted a great teacher, it's hard to accept lesser teachers. Because you're going, wow, I'm kind of wasting my time here. No, give me a good teacher. Give me a tough teacher. Remember that the story of that guru who one of the disciples came in, sir, terrible news. I have great news. Your detractor, your number one detractor, has died. And the guru says, wait a minute, this is terrible. The only one who would give me the truth, my dearest friend. So when you start to feel bad about being criticized, start feeling good. Say, oh good, the Lord is criticizing me. I'm getting what I need. You're going to be the thing is you don't take it by going into unhappiness, you take it by becoming stronger, more connected. Everything that we face in life, remember as Master said, all life experiences are neutral. So everything that happens is an opportunity to get closer to God. And the more intense it is, whether it's pleasurable intense or unpleasurable intense, that intensity, the greater the energy, the greater the ability to turn it towards a higher experience. So when something terrible happens in life, if you can turn that towards God, you'll have a very deep, high experience. Where if you turn it towards negative emotions, it just goes into unhappiness. So, isn't it good to know that we never have to be bothered by being unappreciated again? I'm not seeing any convinced faces. We have to practice this. This is the truth of life. And we don't want it to be so. We want a Band-Aid. But the Band-Aid won't solve all of our problems. So our happiness is in our hands. It's not in the hands of the world. It's in the hands of our choice to be connected to Spirit. And when we feel that, the stronger we feel it, the more true that it is, then the freer we become from the emotional ups and downs that most people live in. Namaste.